Hey, what's going on, everyone? Mike Proctor, that flipping accountant, owner of We Buy Long Island Homes Fast. And I got a really special guest today. My buddy Namon. We've been, buddies for a couple of years now since I started in the real estate game. And if you don't know him, you got to know him. Namon's a little bit behind the scenes. Doesn't do, he's not doing a lot of these face-to-face Instagram stuff, but he's a real big player in the game. And if you don't know him, you definitely got to meet him.
For
So
Clacton,
I
I get
appreciate
it.
it, man. What's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing great, and I appreciate you for bringing me on. I know you only have heavy hitters on this show, so bringing a little small fish like me on to talk about some things that I'm doing is much appreciated. I'm honored to be on.
Yeah,
Can't
no,
say no.
thanks for
I'm
having.
gonna try this. I don't have a mic, so I'm gonna try to be pretty close to the laptop so that your audience can hear me clearly.
Yeah, that's better. I think, yeah, you're a little closer. It was a little better now. But
Yeah,
yeah,
if you can't hear anything, just give me a shout and I'll just
okay.
enunciate.
Yeah,
I'm a
we should have
little.
like we should have talked about it. We should have like a sign ahead of time. I can do like the ear, like a third base coach. Yeah, right. Dude, so all right. So let's do this. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Sure. How far back you want me to go?
Um,
It's a rainy day in 1987.
no. Adult life, adult life.
I'm New York born and raised. Brooklyn originally, spent my early days there, then Long Island, bounced around when I was an adult, Queens, just like apartments and stuff like that. Now I'm out back on Long Island. Um, Went to school on Long Island at Hofstra. I studied finance, economics, and accounting. Got out of college in 2000. I graduated in December 2008. So this was a long time ago. This was like the peak of the recession. Like March 2009 was literally like the
No,
valley of the stock market.
yeah.
So I was one of the lucky few. I had a job lined up. I got out of college that July. I started working at a bank called Credit Suisse, which recently I think is no longer UBS or so. I did a various roles there, like internal consulting, like change management. Then I did some operational support stuff for trading desks. We were creating ETFs for big institutional funds. So I was like managing collateral and all these sort of things, doing settlements. For me, it was kind of boring. It wasn't where the action was. So I was looking to make other moves. After that, I mean, I'm going to just blow through a lot of history here. After that, I got into the quick service restaurant franchise business. And I basically left Credit Suisse. I was like 25, 26. I was managing a little bit of money for myself, like in the stock market, and I was looking at what to do. And eventually, I purchased a couple of franchise locations in the Bronx. And I, like overnight, I became a restaurant manager, and it was a whirlwind. And I ended up managing, quickly sold one, and then managed one for 5 or 6 years, and we sold that in 2020. Um, and Along the way, I started to get into real estate. I dabbled in it in my 20s, like my uncle was buying rentals in New Jersey. So I had small investments going on with him. But as the years got on, I got more and more involved until I finally sold the pizza business in 2020. And then after that, I've just been full time real estate. Um, with the company that you know of, which is Simple Sell Home Buyers. That's the brand.
Okay. All right. So why did you, I guess explain that transition, right? So you went over from owning one franchise, maybe a couple franchises in the food industry, and then you like went right into real estate, which is great. Real estate's awesome, but I just want to know what was going on. That's a big
So that's a fantastic question. And what really happened was I bought two locations in 2014, quickly sold one after we brought up the sales. It was like a quick flip, so to speak. And then one, we decided we were going to run this and we were going to try to make this a nice, profitable business. when I started the business, it was doing about 14 or 15,000, or maybe a little bit more, like 17,000 a week in sales. And by the time 3 years later, we had built that business up to like 24, 25,000 a week in sales. So now it was really profitable because there's a high fixed cost in that business, right? Your rent and then your equipment and all that sort of stuff. In New York City, that number is around 18,000, where after that, like half of your new revenue, your incremental revenue turns into profit. Because you don't have to
18,000 in weekly revenue.
now if I go from 18 to 19, half of that $1,000 is profit. So if I can go from 18 to 20, I'm making an extra $1,000 a week in profit. Right? That's
Okay.
how you get. That's like the break even point where it becomes, more profitable for you to. It makes sense now to really double down on your marketing and increase your revenues, your top line. So
Okay.
we were up at about 24, 25,000 a week in sales. This was like late 2017. And I had to make a decision. I was like, I'm either going to expand in this market with this brand. The brand was Papa John's Pizza, by the way. I'm sure everybody's heard. And this was out in the Bronx. So I was either going to expand and buy more locations because I didn't want to be a single store restaurant manager for the rest of my life, or I got to do something else. And so what I did was I started doing my research. I started going out into the market, calling everybody that owns a store, low volume, high volume stores, and putting feelers out that, hey, I'm a buyer in this market. Do you know anybody that's looking to sell? So it's like kind of prospecting, right?
Right.
And I started some negotiations with a few people, but lo and behold, I was trying to buy deals, not trying to pay up for these restaurants. So I'm negotiating good prices, and lo and behold, a large, I guess I could call him like a family office investor. The guy, I mean, the family probably is worth millions of dollars. They have other businesses. He's got
Yep.
an office in Manhattan. He comes in and he decides he wasn't involved in Papa John's. He comes in and decides he's got $5 million to buy up as many locations in the New York and surrounding market as possible. And so he starts buying. I think within a year or two, he had 30 locations.
Wow.
And what's happening now is the prices that I'm trying to negotiate these deals with the onesie twosie franchisees that want to get out of the market, he's coming in and overbidding for them.
Yeah.
And so the price starts to inflate. And for me, I'm just like, I'm bid out the market. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to expand. I don't want to spend 300, 400, $500,000 for a store, like an existing store, right? I wanted to spend like 150, $200,000 for a store.
Okay.
So that when I build up the sales, that equity is mine, right? The same way we do now in real estate.
Real estate. Yeah. Same thing.
I wasn't willing to expand in that way, take on a lot of debt, and you know, drop $500,000 for a location that's doing like 20,000 week sales or something like that. So he basically made my decision for me. The market basically made that decision for me, which was like, I'm going to sell and I'm going to do something else. And then then it was just a matter of what was that something else. Um, and um, and I had dabbled in real estate before, as I said before, with small investments with some family members in New Jersey with rental properties. And so I look back at that and I started. And at this point now, this is 2017, right? So 2018, like the information that's available on YouTube now and everywhere else on social media had like exploded, right? Wholesaling, real estate flipping, rehabbing, all this stuff there was just an abundance of information on. And so I started looking into it, and then my immediate thought was, well, how does this work in New York? Because I knew enough from being in business before in the restaurant business that regulations, laws, everything's different in New York as opposed to the rest of the country. So my goal was to figure out how this all gets done in New York. So I searched around. I found a guy that was doing business here. Seemed like he had a legitimate business, doing a lot of volume. I hit him up on Facebook, like a DM, and it turns out he was hiring. And I actually went, interviewed, got the job, and started with him in his acquisitions department. It was like 12 people in the office. And so it was a pretty sizable operation as far as like real estate flippers go, here on Long Island. And I spent the next like 6 to 8 months in their acquisitions department learning like how the sausage is made, that sort of thing, like understanding how the whole business works from data to marketing, lead generation, the whole follow-up pipeline, how the sales process works, getting sales training and locking up deals, and then how the rehab process works and how to put together bids for contractors and dispositioning properties, wholesaling properties, all sorts of stuff. So it was like a I don't remember exactly. It might have been like 8 months. So like, let's say 8 months crash course on real estate investing. And after that, I left and I hung my own shingle, which is simple solar fires.
That's that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And,
think
and
that's sorry.
yeah, that's it. That the rest of that story is the story of getting my ass kicked in the market, trying to find deals and trying to grow a business in the real estate investment scene.
Yeah, so there's a lot there to unpack. I guess the first thing I would say for like new investors, because I was there not that long ago, you definitely want to get experience. Like you got experience right off the bat working for someone. So one, you're getting paid, that's awesome. But you were learning, like you're learning from like a real operation. We both know, we talked offline about who that was, and they got a big operation in the New York area, metro area. Anyway, but as far as like that's concerned, like that's smart. If you can't do that, I would highly suggest getting a mentor, someone who's doing it in the business and learning from them, because it's a tough business, man. Like, I've done it. I've started out without any guidance, and you just spin your wheels. You do a lot of shit, and you don't know what works, and you do it, and you don't do it for long enough, and then it doesn't work out. So, learning from someone who's doing it in the business is very key. Um, definitely.
Yeah, I think both is very important. I think when you're first getting started, proof of concept and having like a framework from someone who's already been there, done that is there's nothing better than that. And if you could get them to pay you to learn, even better, right? So that was my point of view on it, was like somebody's going to pay me, they're going to give me sales training, they're going to let me deal with their leads, like I can go and muck them up and it's on their dime, and I'm going to learn the business, which I otherwise probably would have paid the same guy to teach me how to do exactly what I was learning, right? So it was a win-win. I locked up business for them. I brought in a lot of revenue for them. So they did well. I did well. And then when I was ready, we left on good terms. I gave him like a 30-day notice. I trained the next guy up to make sure that
Right.
I didn't leave him hanging. But I knew when I was there, that was going to be the platform for me to get my education, the real world education, and then take off from there. There was no question in my mind that I wasn't looking for a long-term career or anything like that. So, it wasn't about benefits or what can I make here or anything like that. It was like, give me the education I need, and then, let me take the safety belt off and let me just take off like a rocket.
Yeah, I definitely I want to go back a little bit to the owning the franchise model. It's funny because like what you did is similar to what I want to do going like years and years down the road. Like I don't want to own a Papa John's, but I'm saying like I want to, like, once I can scale the real estate business and make it like where it's generating a lot of income, right? I want to now reinvest a lot of that. Like we've talked about this into rentals and other things, and then even bringing it into other businesses. Where you buying a franchise, or I've talked about the tax and accounting world, having the CPA background. I think it's very interesting, like
Yeah, I think that's
create a
key.
business around that. What's that?
100%. I think that's a genius idea. Like you already have the skill set of accounting. You're a CPA, right?
Yeah.
So you like eat, breathe, and shit numbers essentially, right? And tax code. So you should take that and you have the licensing and you should try to create a business around that. But make sure you're creating a business and not a job for yourself. That's what I would say.
Right.
Like when I got into the franchise business, it quickly became all consuming and a job. I became a restaurant manager, counting inventories every week and hiring, recruiting, firing, understanding how to do the marketing, door to door sales, trying to get schools and businesses to give me their lunch business, that sort of thing. Instead, I should have been focusing more on the right hires, hiring people that would take responsibility inside the store. And it started to happen as the years went on. I was new to the business world, so it was kind of like, trial by fire. And that goes back to our point of having someone that's been there, done that, that you can kind of learn from is critical. Is really important. But then the second piece of it is you have to get out and do. You have to get out there and you have to spend money. You have to spend productive hours on working on whatever it is, whether it's a CPA based business or real estate investing or pizza business. There's a lot of similarities that just revolve around building a successful business that has a operation, it has processes, and I learned a lot from that Papa John system in that regard because they had a tutorial for everything had to be done a certain way, right? And so they were trying to. It's like the McDonald'sization of your
Right.
business is you have to have a set process and procedure everything you do, because you might be an intelligent brain in the operation, but eventually you're going to need to put somebody there that is not 100% of what you can be, or as passionate. And so they have to be able to follow a process, a procedure to get that done.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the trick with the accounting. Like you mentioned a good point. Like, don't create a business but you created a job with that business, because with the accounting world, that's kind of what it is, man. Like it's very, CPAs it's very hands-on. You have to have the knowledge. So like that business is very reliant on the technical expertise of the accountant, right? So, I got to figure out
I imagine
what's that?
I imagine there's a high labor cost component, and all
Yeah.
your assets are walking out of your office every night and going home. Right? There's no like equipment or a piece of IP or technology that's important to your business. It's really the people that you hire.
Yeah. That's the
So
problem.
there's probably some intricacies there to how to make that a profitable business.
Right. It's
Incentivize.
like if you read the E-Myth, and then he talks about that, I think towards the end of the book, like, you want to create a business where like it's so simplified, where the tasks are so simplified, like anyone can do it. But in accounting, it's not like that, because I guess the point he was making is the more complex those tasks are, the more like by the balls you have, like your employees have you by the balls, right? Like what are you gonna do? Like nothing, because their skill set is so important towards the outcome of the product that like it's tough to scale. It really is. So that's why, I mean, I have some strategies on how to like overcome that, but we don't have to get into that right now. But yeah, it's something to think about down the road, but do it in a way that's
Yeah,
not.
that's very cool. If you do that, I'd like to have a piece of that business. You figure out how to do that in a way.
Yeah, I mean, because like, listen, like accounting is there's so many different avenues, right? Like what I work in on the day to day right now is, sort of like the big business, right? I work for, or our firm works for a lot of big businesses. I'm mainly in the real estate field, but so the point, I wouldn't go after that that market, right? Like, yeah, our billables are very high, but you also need a very complex. It's very complex. You need very smart accountants that specialize in this field. So I wouldn't go after that. I'd probably go after like the 1040 client. Like, you have a 1040, right? Everyone does. Like they
Yes.
file their taxes. Sometimes, like a lot of those returns are very easy. Some could be very complex, but some are very easy. Like H&R Block, like those guys will bang out a 1040. It might take them 15, 20 minutes to do the return, and they're charging you
Yeah.
$350.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good example. H&R Block is a great example of they figured out a model to like make
Yeah.
their accounting services pretty cookie cutter.
And I think that's the model to go after, just because it's not complex. You can really hire an intern, a college intern, to do a 1040. It's very, very easy. And like I said, you can get away charging 350, for that, for 15, 10 minutes of your time. Right? Like where are you gonna who's gonna pay you at an hourly rate that high if you're banging out
Well,
volume?
not I'm glad now that I know that I'm gonna go and renegotiate with my CPA to get those rates lower.
Well, you got a business that's a little more complex. Like I'm sure you would do such schedule C or an S corp.
Yeah, I'm an LLC.
Yeah, but are you filing on your 1040, or do you have a separate tax return that you file for the business? So meaning, like, how many tax returns are
Mm,
filed for you each year? Like just one, or do you have more than one?
well, we file the business's tax return, and then we put that income becomes my personal income, like a
Okay.
pass through or something like that.
Yeah, most likely you have an S corp for the business. Um, Most likely. So yeah, it's those two returns. It's a little different. It's not super complex, but it's more complex than just getting like a 1040 with the W2. Like a fireman and teacher are married, right? They just have two W2s. Let's say they don't itemize their deductions. Like that return I can do in 5 minutes, you know, and like something like that is yeah, the going rate's like $300 or something like that for that return. So
So what do you like better? You do like that work better, or do you like the real estate flipping better that you've been successful with?
no, I like the real estate stuff better. I've always had a passion for real estate. I'm just saying, like, that's interesting. It's interesting work. I don't have a lot of clients like that. Like, let's be honest. But if I were to grow a business
Mhm.
around this skill set, I think that's the model I would go after through like certain advertising, PPC, and other ways as well, SEO. Um, because
Mhm.
believe it or not, like that's a thing too for accountants. Like we do the same thing in our real estate business.
Sure.
Uh, Very interesting stuff. But all right, so we don't have to go on about that. But how did you grow your business in the beginning, right? Like you were talking a little bit about, you started out and you went on your own, and then what was the first early years like, getting deals done?
I'm still trying to forget the early years. You're trying to bring me back into that. It was a lot of brain damage. So when I first started, I had some money to throw at the business, but because I was trying to figure out if I could do this myself in New York, and I'm kind of conservative, um, and it depends on the scenario. Sometimes I take more risks, and sometimes I'm pretty conservative. But in the beginning, I wanted to set a cap for how much money I was going to invest to see if this business would. So for the first year, I said I'm going to put a lot of sweat equity into the business because I did have time. Like my business was my um, restaurant business was kind of humming on its own. I had managers in place, and I was doing just a couple hours of like overseeing every week. And so I had a lot of time to devote to it, and that's why I took that job in that acquisitions department. And once I left there, I still had that. Now I had more time because I left that job, and so I was like, all right, now I'm going to spend all that time I was spending for that other person. I'm going to dedicate it towards my business. And so I spent a lot of sweat equity. And probably in the first 12 months, I probably spent like 20, somewhere between 20 and $25,000 marketing and software and all sorts of different things. And the way it broke down was I literally I was cold calling off of my cell phone, uh, just like lists that I was pulling from PropStream for a couple months. Got a contract off of that. That didn't pan out. It was a short sale that ended up not working out. Worked on it for a couple of years. But when I really started to have traction was this was still 2019, like maybe fourth quarter 2019. My friend told me to start doing SMS marketing. And that kind of changed the game for me. And 2019 for SMS marketing was really like the golden years, 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
And I started texting using a software. At that time, I was using something called Lead Sherpa. And I probably texted, like I would get up, go to my office and just start texting all day, taking phone calls, doing my follow-ups for like I wasn't married. I was dating my wife at the time, but I wasn't married yet. We didn't have kids yet, so it was kind of like my day was my own, right? And so I'd get up, I'd text, call, go on appointments, and that would be like my existence for 6 months, like maybe 12 hours a day. And I ended up doing quite a bit of business from there, but it didn't pan out right away. So I did 6 months of texting, and then I kind of just shut down texting because what happened was COVID happened, right? And when COVID happened, I was forced back into my store because when COVID happened, you know, the executive orders went out and people were encouraged to stay home and they were getting their unemployment plus they were getting like an additional I think $600 a week or something like that or 500 whatever that number was. So a lot of my staff was a minimum wage like delivery drivers and pizza makers and things like that were just like it doesn't make sense for me to come to work. I'd rather just stay at home. Right? So my business doubled because we were takeout and delivery food business. So those type of businesses did phenomenal during COVID. So business doubled, but my staff, 90% of my staff left. And so it was a really, really challenging period that forced me back into the store. And I essentially shut down all my marketing. And I wasn't even really thinking about real estate from like late February 2020 until I guess June or July of 2020. And I was just focused on getting my store back in order and then eventually finding a buyer for it because the sales went up. So I was like, you know what,
Yeah.
this is a great time to sell.
Yeah.
But the point is, from that 6 months of text message marketing, I had enough leads that I was able to close a bunch of deals in the latter half of 2020. But I started marketing maybe like October 2019, and I didn't close my first deal until August of 2020. So about a year it took to make a dime back from my initial efforts in the real estate business, in the real estate direct to seller marketing business. And even when I did close my first deal was a wholesale. I wholesaled a small house in Hicksville to a builder, and the prices were insane at that time. Like you can't get. I think I bought it for like 335, and I wholesaled it for 365 or something, 360 or something like that. Like you can't find lots in Hicksville, Plainview, Bethpage. Like you would have to pay like 500,000 for the same lots today. It's only been 2 or 3 years. But I made like 25 grand on my first wholesale. Up until that point, I had spent $20,000 on the business and a year's worth of effort. And then my attorney took $2,500 for his legal fees. So literally, I netted $2,500 after 1 year of working in the real estate business and no compensation for my time. So when people talk to me about, I've been, I made a few phone calls and the sellers don't want to sell, I'm just like, you either have to figure out, you have to change your expectation, right? And do more and put in a lot more input, or you got to get the F out of this business and go back to your day job, because you have, it's deferred gratification. Any sales business is about building a pipeline and then relentlessly following up with that pipeline, right?
Right.
Getting qualified leads into the pipeline. In year one, your pipeline looks like this, it's zero. And then you add a few people to your pipeline, but you haven't done any deals, or maybe you did one deal like I did, right? And then year two, you add a few more people to your pipeline, and that pipeline is continuing to grow, and it's only valuable to you if you're continuing to put follow-up processes in place to reach back out to those people. And now here I am in 2023 closing business where the first touch was 2019 and 2020, right? And so that's how your business grows. That's how you're able to do one, going from one or two deals a year to one or two deals every couple months, to one deal every month, to a couple deals every month, is you have this monstrous pipeline that you're continuously following up with. So the effort that you put in to generate leads 5 years ago, maybe one or two of those deals close this year. And then 4 years ago, the effort that you put in, some of those deals close this year. And then before you know it, you have 4 or 5 deals closing,
Yep.
over the course of a month. And that is what a lot of people don't understand. Your first year in sales and marketing is supposed to be tough. It's not supposed to be as good as your fifth year is going to be. So there's that great quote, right? Don't be upset about the results you're not getting from the work you haven't put in yet. Right? Put in the work now, and then later, if you're continuously doing everything you're supposed to do, generating leads, following up with your leads, learning your market, understanding how to make offers, and building rapport with sellers, maintaining those relationships, eventually you're going to buy a bunch of houses. And I'm blessed, like every year has been better than the year before. So to finish up that year back in 2020, so I closed my first deal in August of 2020, and I hadn't closed a deal for a year, right? That my first year, I hadn't closed any business, and then I closed my first a year later. But then a month after that, I closed another deal, right? And that was a much bigger.
Oh.
It was like a $60,000 deal, right? And then I was like, okay, this makes sense. And then I sold my business, and I was just like, I'm doing this full time. And then we started getting more and more consistent every year, after that.
Yeah, that's interesting, man.
But yeah, to recap, I mean, SMS marketing became like a primary. We just wanted marketing channels I was using in the beginning.
Right.
SMS marketing became after that, I hired employees to manage it for me so that I'm not the guy prospecting. And then we just kind of tightened up our follow-up system, and then I hired someone to follow up with my existing leads so that they're always being touched. And then so I started to put pieces together to make a legitimate business instead of me hustling up deals, which sometimes I still feel like I'm just hustling up deals. But I've come a long way since that beginning year, for sure.
Okay, so that's a good point. So you mentioned in the beginning how it takes a long time. Like, dude, I started in 2020, and I didn't get my first deal till 2022. It wasn't 2 years. It was probably, actually, maybe it was close to 2 years. It started in May of 2020. I got a deal in February of 2022. So yeah, almost 2 years of just like grinding. I mean, I wasn't doing the marketing like that I'm doing now, or even what you were doing when you first started out. It was really just network referrals and that sort of thing, building on a network. And it took 2 years, man. I mean, that's when a lot of people quit, like early on. Like a lot of new investors, like they don't see it through. They say real estate doesn't work. And it's really because they only try for like 3 months. And I get calls at least once a week, sometimes multiple times a week, from like new investors, because they just go on the website and they're looking for cash buyers, right? So they find me,
Yeah.
and they call me, and I always tell them, I'm like, first off, like, you shouldn't even be trying to find cash buyers. This is a whole nother conversation we could talk about. But I'm like, you really need to be calling homeowners, and you really got to do this consistently and do it for a long time, because a lot of these people, I never hear from them again. never hear from them again. And even people in my networking group, they reach out to me, they're really inspired, they want to talk to me, and I love talking with them as well. But I'll never hear from them again. And then, 6 months later, they're nowhere to be found in real estate. So you can't, and
Yeah.
then you're gonna say, "Oh, real estate sucks, it doesn't work." And it's like, no, it didn't work for you because you didn't do anything with this business. You didn't try hard enough, you didn't try long enough, and yeah, you failed. So that is the key, is really just do this for a long amount of time. And you'll see
Yeah,
results.
I think
Mhm.
and what I would add to that is like you gave the example of like a guy that or girl that's working on something for 3 months and they don't see results, right? And what I would add to that is if we really dug into their 3 months and tried to pull out of those 3 months the productive time that they're spending, right?
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about business cards. I'm not talking about watching Grant Cardone YouTube videos or even some wholesaler like a Max Maxwell YouTube videos. I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about productive time doing the tasks that are revenue generating, like producing leads, talking to people that own real estate in your market, identify, and even having a conversation with a shitty lead is not productive. Like you need to
Right.
end that call right away. You need to move on and talk to someone who is actually considering selling, right? And qualify them, have those interesting, tough, but valuable conversations, qualify them, and then set up a follow-up accordingly, whether that's to go out to see it or whatever, whatever the business model is, make a virtual offer or whatever, and then follow up with those people. If we were to dig into those 3 months of most new investors that are now having success and then audit that time and figure out exactly what they're doing and how much of that time they're spending is actual productive revenue generating activity, you might find that they spend less than a day or two on productive revenue generating activities. And I am not innocent of that either. Today,
Yeah.
till this day, in business, I am guilty of spending a lot of time either bullshitting with my boy Mike Placter on the phone or some other investor talking about different things or watching a YouTube video or just taking some time off, hanging out with my wife if she's off or hanging out with my kids, which is all great. It's all important stuff. But we can't kid ourselves, right? And that's what actually, I'm sorry. That's actually what gives me a lot of optimism for the future of my business is that I'm having some success and I'm not even like I'm like in first or second gear right
Yeah.
now. If I really audit myself, figure out room for growth, right? Just to button up operationally what I'm doing, there's a lot of room for growth. Then if you add on top of that marketing, additional marketing and that sort of thing, I'm really optimistic and positive about where the business can go. I'm glad I spent the time to break into the New York market, right? Because I know there's a lot of barriers to entry and hurdles
Yeah.
that we can talk about if it's important to your audience, you think. But I'm glad I figured out how to crack this nut because now when I do a deal, the deals are nice and juicy and there's not a lot of competition. There's not a lot of new wholesalers that are like running around with contracts like they might be in like some wild, wild west, Midwest market. I love this market and I'm really looking forward to what I can build moving forward, 2024 and beyond. Right? We're making this video at the end of November of 2023. So I'm doing a lot of planning for 2024 and I'm really excited. I'm optimistic about where I
Yeah.
can take this video.
I want to actually just say a quick story and then we'll go into the New York, because you brought up a good point about the New York barriers to entry. So I remember a couple of years ago, a new investor, he was asking me the question because he knew I was a CPA, about structuring the business and, setting up the LLC and all this stuff. And I remember explicitly being like, dude,
A
that's
lot of
all
bullshit.
good. What'd you say? It's like a delay. Anyway,
Yeah, it's like he's asking you a bunch of bullshit questions, right? Basically. when it
Yeah,
comes
but
down
like,
to it.
the thing was, he was dead set on. So I was like, dude, you have to, you shouldn't be worrying about that. You should worry about that like after a couple deals, maybe. Like, don't even like generate money first, and then worry about the structure of your entity. And he was dead set on getting that entity set up, right? So he went out of his way after I told him not to. He went out of his way, probably paid an attorney $1,000 or $1,500 to set up the LLC. Now he's all set up and everything was all great. And honestly, I never heard from the guy ever again. Like, I don't even think he's in real estate anymore. So he just flushed money down the drain. And I'm like, dude, and that was my whole point. Like, dude, you
Yeah,
cannot be spending money and wasting time. More importantly, wasting your time on what is the proper structure of my LLC, and you haven't even done a deal yet. There's no reason to set any of that shit up
yeah,
until you're actually doing deals. So I always tell people, and people look at me, they're like, wow, I can't believe the CPA is like telling me not to do this and this and this. And I'm like, but it's the reality. You shouldn't waste money if you don't have a business yet. And a lot of these guys don't have businesses yet. So
yeah. And I think you were speaking to him as not Mike Plachter, the CPA, right? You were speaking to him as the Plachter factor, the rental stacker, the entrepreneur who was like, dude, get out there and talk to sellers and build some lead pipeline and then worry about the rest of that shit later. And he didn't understand that. And I think a lot of that is if you don't have the entrepreneurial mindset, um, you're scared, right? There's a lot of fear-based activities out there. And it's like, you want to do stuff that makes you feel comfortable, right? I have a 19-year-old kind of like a mentee, right? And I talk to him a lot and he'll be telling me like, yo, I watched this great video by Patrick Bet David or whoever the hell he's watching, right? Andrew Tate and all these guys on YouTube about, business and this. And I took mad notes and he's trying to show me his notes. And I'm like, I don't know. That right there, what you did there was mental masturbation. You did things that made you feel comfortable in your room or in your office instead of doing the things that are uncomfortable but productive, which is calling someone and saying, hey, I drove by your house. It looks like a piece of shit. Do you have any thoughts towards selling that? That's the conversation you should be probably having, but
yeah,
you're not. I mean, don't tell somebody their house looks like a piece of shit. That's a bad idea. But you need to be talking to sellers and building your pipeline as opposed to what color business card should I generate.
right.
And as a caveat to, or as a side point, if you want to do business cards, go for it. I mean, that'll help you. If you want to set up your website, set up your website. I think that'll help. It'll help lend credibility when you do talk to sellers.
Yeah, I agree.
If you want to get incorporated, sure, set up the LLC, but that should not stop you. If you're you have to manage your time properly. If let's say you have a full-time job and all you could do is give 10 hours towards your business, if there are 10 productive hours, 8 of those hours should be towards generating leads. And we're talking about people that want to flip houses, right? This is the advice to them. Like 80% of that time should be towards generating leads. Then if you want to take 2 hours and do stuff on the side, like set up your LLC and watch YouTube videos and network and get your business cards in order, by all means do that. That it's not a problem. It can definitely help you, but make sure you're not doing one thing because you're scared to do the more important things. That's really the takeaway on that.
Yeah. All right. Good point. Well, all right. So while I transition into this next question, Naman, why don't you turn your video off, turn it back on, because on my end it's frozen. So maybe that'll fix it.
Oh,
But it's all good. So anyway, as far as the you're talking about New York. So let's get a little bit into that. Like, let's get a little bit into like investing and doing deals in New York versus like other markets. Like, why is there a barrier to entry here? Why is it harder here, or is it not as hard? Like, what are the pros and cons, I guess, investing on like mainly Long Island,
the
New York?
bottom line is downstate New York is uh, the way I think about it, it's a real market, right? It's a real market with real houses. It's not monopoly money. You can't buy the house for $50,000 out here. Like the average home price in Nassau County is probably like somewhere around $700,000, like the median home price. In Suffolk County, maybe it's like 450, 500, 550. I mean, things are climbing, right? So that's one of the big hurdles is, you can't just get into contract on a $50,000 house. Like you got to buy a house, even if it's run down and needs work. I'm paying like $500,000 for these houses, right? Putting them in contract. And what does putting them in contract look like? Well, first of all, it looks like you're going to have to deal with a seller's attorney. And a seller's attorney is not going to just send you a contract or take over your contract that says, oh, I'm going to buy this house contingent upon me getting my finances and contingent upon me getting my due diligence in order, and my inspection period is going to be 30 days. And also everything is contingent upon the approval of my business partner, who's not identified, is a mysterious person that could be your cat. um, you know, we don't get those kind of contracts. Like we get, the what we call it hard contracts. When we sign on the dotted line and we send a deposit, we are expected to close on that property. There's no contingency, financial, inspection, due diligence. There's none of that. These are big boy and big girl contracts. And to top it off, there's real money at risk. So even if you're in a hard contract elsewhere in the country, if you don't perform as a buyer, meaning you don't close on that property, usually the remedy is that the seller can keep your deposit. Now, in other parts of the country, if they're putting $100 down, literally $100 or $10 or $1,000, maybe that's a risk that people are willing to take control of a contract. Here in New York, I mean, I have seen some other players do like $2,500 down, but most of the time I'm putting five. Very rarely am I putting $5,000 down. Most of the time I'm putting 10,000, 15,000, 20, 25, or straight up 5%, 10% of the contract price. So if I'm buying a house for $500,000, usually that first draft of the contract comes through and they want $50,000 deposit. Right now, we're buying a lot of houses at one time, so it becomes a cash management problem for us. So we always try to negotiate back to the seller and the seller's attorney and say, hey, we get it. You want a sizable down payment. Can we do 5%? So instead of 50 grand, we put 25,000 down. Can we do 10 grand? Can we do 15? It really depends on the situation and that sort of thing. But you have a lot of things that are deterrents in this market. The property values are high. The cost of construction is high. Contractors are usually bozos, right? And if you find a great contractor, treat them like the gold that they are, and don't make sure that they're appreciated financially and otherwise, and pay sort of stuff. Attorneys run the contracts here, so that adds a layer of complexity. And then I mentioned that once you sign a contract, you are hard in that contract. You are expected to perform, otherwise you will lose a sizable down payment. To top that off, seller personalities here are a little bit different than elsewhere in the country. We're a little bit more guarded. New Yorkers are hard motherfuckers, and they understand. They have a high BS meter, right? Yeah. If you're randomly reaching out to them saying, hey, I buy houses, for the most part, they're going to think you're full of shit until you prove otherwise. So your sales process is very important here, right? And being able to be a personable person that communicates an honest perception over the phone in the first conversation, or if they reply to your mail piece or they find you online, you have to be able to convey that you are professional, honest, a person of integrity. It helps if you actually are all these things, because then that'll convey properly. So there's a lot of complexity in New York that other markets don't have to deal with. And I think that makes it challenging. But that what it also does, so the plus side and the reason why I decided I'm going to figure this market out is, because I figured that means that there's a lot less direct to seller marketers in this business. And I think that's pretty much true. There's not a lot of people that are doing marketing direct to seller for off market properties relative to some other big markets. And I think that is a huge advantage because it means less competition for direct to seller off market properties. And what I've noticed is when I acquire properties, the profits are fantastic, and they're talking to other people in different markets. Like the profits are like double, triple, quadruple what you know rehabbers and wholesalers are able to accomplish in other markets. So for me, it's all worth it. I love this market. I want to continue.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I would, every point you mentioned, it's absolutely true. Would you say now, getting into like the sales and marketing, would you say how important is the sales process versus the marketing? Like maybe some people think 50-50, right? You got to have a really good sales process and you obviously have to do good marketing, but I think we've
Yeah.
talked about this in the past. Like it's definitely more important to have a good marketing, drawing in the leads, and then having the sales process is also important, but maybe not as important.
So sometimes I feel like my answer is a little biased based on my experience, but I think I'm a pretty decent at the sales process myself, right?
Yeah,
As a
I
sales.
think so. I'm always asking
And
you for tips.
yeah, and I'm not
You there? Oh, he froze.
founded.
You froze up. I couldn't. We missed the last 10 seconds.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, we're good.
Did you hear me talk about John Martinez's sales training?
No, haven't.
All right. So in 2018, I was fortunate enough to go through John Martinez's sales training, who was a sales trainer, um, and for real estate investors. And so he had a very practical, above board, honest way, sales process that I trained with. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that his is the only one that's uh, good or whatever, but I actually had a process that I trained with and I learned. And then I've been practicing that for 5 years. So now I take that sales process a little bit for granted, right? So I don't, in my mind, I don't think sales is that important because now it's a natural part of what I do. So to me, marketing now is much more important because I see results. I see the changes in my results as I ratchet up the marketing. And when I ratchet down the marketing, I see that I have less results. So to me, it's really obvious like, oh, wow, the marketing really makes a difference. So if you ask me to give you a number as far as what's the most important, the marketing or the sales, I would say the marketing is more important. I would say, turning over the rocks and finding the right leads is probably the most important part of what you need to do. So I would probably say 70-30 in favor of marketing. Um, unless you're a real bozo, right? Like if you're just naturally like a sleazeball, right? You're gonna need some real sales training. But if you're naturally like an ordinary person, like a regular person, you can have a decent conversation. You're not out to like get somebody, right? You can listen to someone, listen to their concerns, what their reasons for selling are, and try to craft a solution that caters to their problems, to what they're trying to solve with the sale of their real estate, and make a fair offer. I mean, that's the goal of a sales process, right? Is to extract the needs and wants of the seller and try to repackage that with an offer and terms that solves all their needs and wants and their problems, right? So a lot of people can do that in a natural way, unless they're real bozos, and then they're going to need they're going to have a problem with their sales process if they're not, just natural humans that can have a conversation with one another. I do think it's important to have sales training. So if someone feels like they really know nothing about sales training, it might make sense to Google a few things, watch some videos, read a few books, maybe take a course or two. I don't. I would say the most important thing though is to get marketing, right? Turn over rocks
Yep.
and put leads in your pipeline. And then the second most important thing, or uh, and not the second most important thing, but the other most important thing, because they're both important. The marketing's important, and then the second thing that's also just as important is to have a robust follow-up system.
Yeah.
Right. I made a video the other day on my Instagram where I said uh, follow up is not a nice to have in your business. Follow up is your business. Like that is it, right? When you generate leads, you put them in your pipeline, and then the next thing that you have to do is set intelligent follow ups and make sure you're doing your follow ups. Almost 100% of my business comes from follow ups. It's never been a one call close, right? And I'm not afraid to say, like I think some people are afraid to say that they don't do one call closes because they think that makes them look like bad salespeople. But in these high value sales, like a piece of real estate, you're not gonna be able to close somebody over the first call nine
Right.
times out. Maybe randomly that'll happen every once in a while. But you're going to have to follow up with people. We do at least a couple calls before we get out to the house, at least one call before we get out to the house. Then I go out to the house. I'll meet with the seller. I will tour the property. We'll have another conversation there. And usually I'm making an offer later that day or the next day over the phone. They're getting an email. And then sometimes they don't accept the offer right away, right? And then you have to cultivate that and follow up with them for a week, 2 weeks before they decide. And then other times it's months before I can even get out to the house. They're not ready for whatever reason. So there's a lot of cultivating that needs to go on. There's a lot of nurturing of relationships. And then sometimes it's a waiting game. Like somebody's just not ready to sell. Like, yeah, I might sell in 6 months. Why don't you reach back out to me? That doesn't mean it's a bad lead. That just means you got to reach back out to them in a couple months.
Right.
Right. So yeah, it's a long answer to your question about sales versus marketing. I think I would probably say marketing is more important. Follow up is just as important, and being able to have a normal conversation is pretty important, and that's where sales is.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was really good, man. Let's get into marketing a little bit. Like, what is, I mean, should I ask the dumb question? What's the best marketing channel?
The best marketing channel this year in 2023 for simple sell home buyers in terms of deal volume was SMS marketing, um, mass SMS marketing. The biggest deals that I did this year in terms of uh, profit uh, were from some type of referral based uh, marketing, right? So someone sends me a Driving for Dollars deal or something like that. Um, the quickest time frame to a deal came from digital. So this year we started buying leads from pay per lead sources. So the quickest ROI came from those digital leads. Um, but I mean, all this stuff, if someone just watched that last 30 seconds and then went out and took massive action based on those 30 seconds, they would probably have very bad results.
Yeah.
Because taken out of context, and that's why I think sometimes these people that preach massive action, I mean, their heart is in a good place, but you do need to have some type of context to what you're doing, right? So there is some level of education that's needed to our earlier point of getting mentorship and maybe getting paid to work for someone and learn the business, because all answers need some nuance to it, right? So, for example, 2023 was the best the best marketing channel for me was SMS marketing. but I can almost guarantee that 2024 will probably be the exact opposite. Right?
Yeah.
I probably won't do a 12x return on investment from my SMS marketing next year, which I did this year. Um, and the reason is because there's a lot of regulations in place that are, the umbrella of if anyone wants to research that, is 10 DLC regulations that are being implemented by the carriers. So I expect that response rates, I don't expect, I can see that response rates have gone substantially down. I'm still optimistic about SMS marketing, and I think we're going to get less responses, but the responses that we're going to get, um, we may be able to pull some good leads out of there and turn them into deals over time. But I think like the KPIs are going to change and the numbers are going to change and all that sort of stuff. But you can't just say, oh, Namon said SMS was good, so SMS is going to be great next year. It doesn't work that way. You have to understand how the market is changing and be up to date on that. Same thing with the pay per lead, right? My pay per lead return on investment a couple months ago was like a 4x, right? For every dollar I spent, I made four. But since then, I've been buying leads from these same companies, and my expenses are going up, but I'm not closing deals, right? So, the lead quality is kind of like a little wishy-washy. So that 4x is becoming like 3.5x on its way to 3x, and
Hmm.
who knows where it lands, right? So if somebody says, "Oh, Naman says the quickest way to get a deal is pay per lead," and they start it and they get a bunch of junky leads, the devil's in the details. You have to understand the context of it, right? Um, Referrals were good, but I don't do a lot of referral business. That's something that I want to set my sights on, doing a lot more referral business, and getting a lot more business coming in from network and people that know what I do and can trust that they can work well with me and that sort of thing. So doing things like this podcast so people can understand what I'm doing and how I can work together with them has to be part of what I do going forward. Um, so yeah, so I mean the point why I'm elaborating so much on my answer is to give people more context to what's the best marketing channel. Right? The best
Yeah.
mar- I suspect the best marketing channel for my business next year, given like that I'm putting in place, might be like PPC, direct mail, stuff like that. Stuff that we did very little of. I did no direct mail this year, and I did the only PPC I did was through uh, paid leads. Right, next year my business will look totally different. So you have to kind of be versatile and adapt as the market changes.
Yeah, no, it's interesting with the different lead sources. Like when you're going outbound, right, with SMS, with whether it's cold calling, like those are got your cash conversion cycle will be so much longer because you're reaching out cold and these people are just not ready to sell, or to get people when they're ready to sell might take them a year, whereas PPC, like they're clicking, or SEO, like they're ready to go. Referrals, another one, like those people are telling someone that I'm ready to sell. So when that person's ready to sell, they're reaching out to your network, and that person in your network's coming to you. So like those two, like I said, those three actually are very fast cash conversion cycle, because those are people ready to go. Whereas like the cold stuff, like direct mail, might take a longer. Cold calling might take longer to get your money. It might take you a year to actually convert on some of those deals.
I agree.
Whereas so it's interesting. I didn't
I
realize that
agree.
early on.
And the one thing I will add to that, there's just a little bit of nuance there, is telemarketing usually has a longer cash conversion cycle, which means from the moment you spend money and you reach that prospect to the time where you're actually closing a deal and cutting a check for yourself is long. It's a long cash conversion cycle, maybe 9 months to a year or longer.
Particularly if you're
Um,
flipping.
yeah, especially if you're flipping, then it's even longer. But the point is, oftentimes those are big deals because there's not a lot of other people talking to that person. There's not a lot of competition. So, and then you have that 9 months, 6 months of if you're doing your follow-up right, you are building rapport, nurturing that relationship. And so when they're ready to sell, I've had so many people that, I have them on the calendar for a follow-up and they call me before I can get to them. And they're like, yo, Jay, or Naman, you've been calling me every month for the last 6 months. I'm ready to do something. It happens a lot, a lot. A lot of my business has came that way, where I have them and I'll look and I'll be like, oh, I didn't have this guy scheduled for a call for like another 3 weeks. He
Wow.
was me because I've been building that relationship with him through a robust follow up system, right? So I think big deals come from telemarketing. It's actually a shame that carriers are kind of restricting that. I don't blame them because they're looking out for their client's best interests, and the spam levels, even on my cell phone, they get high. So that's one thing I wanted to add about telemarketing. Whereas on the digital side, I think the prospect, the seller, is a lot further along in the decision making cycle, and they're ready to sell and they're ready to make a decision. But oftentimes, if they're reaching out to your ad online, they're probably reaching out to a few other people too. And it's like a cattle call, and they're like, "Well, I'm going to take the best offer out of these, Google searches. I've invited 3, 4, 5 people to come to the house." Um,
I've heard that, man. It is true because I get those calls. I rank like, 2, 3, 4 on the list, and I get those calls all the time. But I was talking with Ben last week, and he said most of his leads actually with the SEO, those people are very like they researched and they're like, oh, I researched, Ben and Leave the Key, and I'm going to go with them. So they already made up their mind, before they even like,
he's saying they're basically pre-sold based on
yeah,
his website and all the content they could find online.
yep,
That's, I think that could be the case with SEO,
yes,
right? Because that person, they're hesitant to click on paid ads. They don't trust paid ads.
yeah,
They're like, I'm going to look at organic stuff. So that's the personality that's like, they're more hesitant. They're going to do a lot of their own research without talking to other people. And then they're going to make up their mind and then call somebody. So with SEO, I could see that being the case. But someone who's clicking on a digital ad, a paid ad, that's
yeah.
probably someone who's really just wants to um, call a bunch of people and get offers. I don't know.
Yeah. I
It's
think
a
you're
good
right.
question. Good
I
follow
think,
up question for Ben and everybody else doing digital.
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and usually like the number one guy is getting those leads because like if Google, like they believe in Google, right? If Google's saying they're number one on that search term, like that's the best person, so they usually go with them. Where a lot of it doesn't really trickle down to the people 2, 3, 4. Like I told you, I don't get a lot of leads SEO, and I rank like pretty high on a lot of important keywords.
Yeah.
So it's a very tough game, that marketing channel.
I've been talking to a lot of digital marketing people as I'm interviewing for 2024 to who like which agency I might want to partner with. And one person told me something that was very interesting. They were like, so instead of for someone like me, I don't rank very well at all. Like you're number 2 in a lot of cases with your website. My website doesn't rank very well at all. And so it may make more sense for someone like me to try to rank for lesser value keywords and try to get to number 1 there because with less effort I could probably get to number 1 on some keywords that maybe you or Ben and Leave the Key and them they're focusing on the higher value keywords like sell my house fast, Long Island or whatever it is. It's going to take me a lot longer to get to number 1 for that keyword. Maybe I could find something that's a little bit more niche of a keyword and try to own that smaller subset of keywords.
Yeah.
And a lot. Maybe that's something that you and your vendor can do. You're probably already doing it because Leave the Key. They kind of have a stranglehold on the SEO searches. Respect to Ben and Larry for the investment they made there. And I see you nipping at their heels too when I do some searches and see your website is ranking very strongly. So it's only a matter of time before you get to number one on a lot of these big money keywords. And then before you know it,
Yeah,
you got a lofty Amalfi Coast, and hopefully you invite your
yeah,
friends
right.
for a cocktail or two.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, man. It's interesting. The thought behind it's very interesting. Like ranking number one and having it, because then the website's a real asset,
Yeah,
uh, unlike a lot of other things in this business. But it it's very difficult. Like we've been trying and we're not even, yeah, we're jumping a lot of our competitors to number two, but we're still number two. So it is what it is. It's just we're
what are
not.
the stats on that? Do you know? Like number one gets like 95% of the
Um,
organic traffic or something?
yeah, Ben told me this, and I've heard this other places as well. Like the first three are the only ones that matter, right? So like number one gets like 70% of the traffic, number two gets 20%, number three gets 10%. And then everyone else below them doesn't get anything. And if you're not on page one, you're definitely not getting anything. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I've heard. It's probably true. Number one, like look, Google anything, right? Best vitamin supplement, best this, best that. Like you're gonna click the first ad or the first organic link. You're not gonna really. You might go to two. You're probably not going to three, and you're definitely not going to four. That's really how it works. And I think it's just, yeah, it's value. The value's in being number one.
That's very interesting. Uh, yeah, and I guess if you're like number 10 at the bottom of the page and you're getting a call, then you could just be assured that they called nine other people before you and it's a cattle call and there's going to be a lot of competition when you get to the house and you're making offers, right? You're not the only one that they're courting.
That was the case I experienced before I did the SEO. Um, except that one around Conquer, the one we've talked about. Like I wasn't ranking, I was on page one, but I wasn't really up there. And they called me and it was a good deal. It worked out.
So
Um,
did you interview them at all to understand their psychology? Why did you call me?
I did, and I don't know, I couldn't get like a straight answer. I think first they told me it was like a referral from someone, and I'm like, I don't even know that person. And then I think they said they Googled something. So I couldn't get a straight answer out of them. I don't know. But yeah, I would like to know because I always try to ask that question, like, hey, what'd you type in? Like, how'd
Yeah,
you find me? Uh,
absolutely.
and no one really gives you an answer. Like they don't remember like what they
I don't
text.
remember. Yeah,
They're like,
it's
oh, I
not.
think I just was typing in cash home buyers like in the area or investors in the area. And now I think I came up, and so they don't really remember the exact search terms, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And to their point, I'm probably the same way when like I said, if it's like a vitamin supplement, like I don't remember what I typed in. I think it was like, what's the best vitamin? You don't know. You don't
Yeah,
remember those things.
that's true.
Not important to you. It's important to us as the investors, but not to the people that are searching.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I guess it'd be important to maybe like I should ask them for their search history. That's what I'll do for an extra 1,000.
Hey, can
Can
you
I have your search history?
screenshot? Yeah, can you screenshot it and then you see all a bunch of other inappropriate searches that people.
Listen, man. It would be interesting to know the real demographic, like who are you buying? Who like these deals? Who are these people, right? You want to know like the demographics. There's a lot of companies out there who claim to like know this stuff, and I've talked with my guy about it. No one really knows. I think like we were talking a little bit of Facebook. I might get into Facebook at some point because there's a lot of data points that they have, and you can kind of like plug in certain people and then they can tell you like this is your demographic, right? So you can kind of target those people. I think Facebook could be a good way of getting to know a little bit about your customer, but yeah, who knows, man? It's interesting
I think
stuff.
the more information you could get on data, that's one of the core, in my mind, that's one of the core components of this business is having good data, quality data. As you know, I think we talked about this before. This year, I started using like a algorithmic predictive data that I paid a lot of money for from a company out in Seattle. And it's basically like they take like 28 to 30 different data points, like weird things like proximity to a gas station is like a
Right.
component, what I understand. And then other more obvious things like a tax lien on the property, foreclosure, what you call it, foreclosure court that hits the courts and becomes a data point publicly available. And they put this algorithm together and then they sell the data to say
Right.
that we predict that if you market to this list, it's a higher probability that these people are going to sell their houses for a discount or to a cash buyer or to an
Yeah.
investor in the next 18 months or so.
That's where I was going with the Facebook, right? Because the Facebook is the same exact thing. That's what we're testing, actually. I don't know if I told you this on the phone, but like we're testing a couple of things. We're putting certain leads that we know are these good leads, and we're putting them into Facebook. And Facebook has hundreds of data points similar to what you did. And we're actually testing out some stuff on TikTok. Not ads. We're not doing paid ads right now, but like, so TikTok, from what I understand, currently used to be like Facebook was in like 2014, right before they got cracked down in like 2016. There was a crackdown on Facebook, right? So Facebook was like, all right, we're not, because of all these laws, like we don't do these types of like data sets or whatever. But TikTok is like completely open. Like they don't give a shit. So apparently there's a lot of I probably shouldn't even be mentioning this, but it's an interesting strategy. But there's a lot of data points on there. So, but the problem is like a lot of our clientele probably isn't on TikTok, right? Because they're older. So that's like another hurdle to come.
In one of those interviews I was having with digital marketing companies, I asked about TikTok, YouTube videos. And when you mentioned TikTok, by the way, I immediately had this vision of you doing like a TikTok dance, like want to sell your house, sell it to Mike Plactor, Plactor Factor.
Well, that's the goal.
That aside, I got to see your dance moves to know if that's going to be effective.
They're not good. Maybe after a couple cocktails, they get better.
I bet they get much better. So I asked this guy, like, what do you think about TikTok and YouTube? And he was like, we have a lot of data and we're just not seeing our seller avatar there. They're not hanging out there. They're hanging out on Facebook and sometimes on Instagram, but primarily on Facebook. So he was bullish on Facebook marketing. So I think it's the right move, what you and your guys are doing as far as
yeah. And my guys, he's testing out on his own because he has a business just like mine, a different market, but he's testing out TikTok. But I don't even like, again, it's more of like, because there's such an availability to different data sets, you can kind of predict like, all right, these people, you could dial it in and be like, these are my clientele. And then they'll direct you towards people that fit that criteria, like way better than Facebook could, because there's so many more like data points that they keep track of, right? Which is kind of invasion of your privacy, but that's a separate conversation.
The other thing I think you need to keep in mind is, and this is from my conversations with a bunch of digital marketing people over the last couple of weeks, is when you find a lead off of Facebook, or if you find a lead from a place like TikTok or YouTube, you have to think of it similarly to when you find a lead through telemarketing, whereas they weren't on Google searching you out or searching out a company similar to you. So they're not that far along on the decision-making timeline. So you're going to have to cultivate that lead a lot longer than you would someone who comes in through a paid ad or through an SEO organic search. So you have to just keep that in mind, that the leads could be good quality, but you'll have to nurture those leads for a longer period of time, similar to an SMS lead, cold call lead or something.
Interesting.
People that are just like, they're hanging out on TikTok, not in, searching you out, right? They're looking at videos of stupid things going on. And then all of a sudden they see your ad and they click on it, like, oh yeah, I'd like a value house. But they weren't like that person who's like, sitting there on Google saying, I need to sell my house that I just inherited. My mother passed, and I got to sell this house. I'm in California. I got to sell this house in New York, and I don't want to deal with the headaches. That person is a high intent person, from what I understand.
So I think you're definitely right. I think one of the things that I've heard people do, and I think my guy does this, is for certain like inherited houses, for example. I think what he does is the form that these people will fill out is kind of in depth. So you kind of weeds out a lot of the bullshit. It'll ask questions. It'll say, did you actually inherit a house? Yes.
Mm.
Okay, like that's a good lead. And then it'll be maybe several other pages of questions.
Yeah,
And then if they fill everything out, then like this probably has a better chance of being motivated as opposed to like a cold lead. But you're right. You're right.
yeah, that's smart.
You're right though about the intent. Like if they're not intent at that time, they're just going through Facebook and they fill out your form. They're not going to be ready at that moment, but they might be eventually. Whereas I think what I was talking about, there is more intent because you're targeting them. You're saying based on these data points, go after this group, and then if they fill out this form all the way through, maybe they are motivated. So I don't know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I like that idea a lot, of like having those hurdles to make sure that these people are qualified, especially if you find them on those, the Facebooks and the TikToks or YouTube and stuff like that, to make sure they are qualified. They qualify themselves, right? Basically, by continuing to go along the process. Um, Anecdotally, where I found issues with that stuff is like through these pay per lead channels where I'm paying for some other company to generate a lead and send it to me. I always dig deep on those people, especially if they're like, if I unqualify them and they're not like real
Yeah.
leads. Didn't you fill out a form on my website? Like, didn't you come to my website and fill out a form? And I have found that a lot of these people be like, no, no, I saw you on TikTok and it said instant cash offer. So I clicked it and blah, blah, blah. But I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense in that if you make the barrier to entry to become a lead higher with a bunch of form fills, then that person who was just like instant cash offer, click, then they see, oh, I got to fill out all these, nah, forget it, and they leave. So we'll eliminate a lot of that garbage that the pay per lead companies are are sending over to us because they want our money, essentially.
Yeah, that's the problem I have with the PPL, the paper leads, because you don't know how they're getting these leads. And their whole business model is going to be uh, spend the least amount of money to get a lead. So and look at
Sell
people
it for the highest amount of
and
money I
sell
can
it for
buy.
the most, right? So, but how does PPC work? Google is the best, but they're the most expensive. So they're going to try other ways to get them cheaper. So they're going to go to like Facebook, they're going to go to TikTok, they're going to go to whatever, and they're just going to have a
Just
generic
website
form.
banner
Yeah,
ads, websites like programmatic display ads and things
yeah,
like
just
that.
a quick, yeah, exactly. Just the cheapest way of getting in front of people. And if they click it and says fast offer, fast cash offer, and they fill out an easy form, boom, they have a product
Yeah,
they can repackage and sell to you. And
yeah,
it's
I
trash.
think that's 100%. I'm in line with that thought process. I think I've used them this year and I've done well. I don't think it's going to last forever. It's like one of those things where when it's hot, you jump on the bandwagon and you get those deals. But I think as more people become clients of these pay per lead vendors, the incentives are like misaligned, right? The incentives that the pay per lead companies have is to generate as many leads as possible,
Right.
like you mentioned, to your exact point, for as cheap as possible and sell them to us. Like they want to generate them for $50 and sell them to us for 300, and they want to do that as many times as possible. Um, Whereas we would not like to have those $50 leads if we're paying $300 for them. We want higher
Right.
quality leads. But if they just sent the high quality stuff, they wouldn't have enough leads to sell. So that's why I decided it's going to make a lot of sense. And I'm probably late to the game and behind the eight ball on this, but it makes a lot of sense to build out your own
Yeah.
uh, Google AdWords uh, campaigns so that you own that asset and you control that market and you optimize for your keywords, and it'll be an asset that lives with you forever as the years go on.
Yeah.
So that's the goal for my company in 2024 to be more of our own paid leads. Maybe a little bit of organic. I don't want to step on your toes, so I'll leave that business.
Don't do it, man. Don't do SEO. That's just I don't know. I think it sounds great, but I don't. It's not there. Like I said, we're doing it right now. It's like it's working. Like we definitely are going higher in rankings, but doesn't matter. I don't think it really matters until you're number one. And who knows how long this is going to go. If it doesn't work out and we don't take over number one, it's like we'll just cut our losses. And I have a great website that works. I know that.
I think you got to be patient with SEO. Yeah, you have to give it like 18 months to 2 years before you really.
Oof. I've already been doing it like 3 months. I'm like done. I'm like I'm throwing in the towel already, man.
So now we're sounding like that avatar we were talking about before, which is like, I've been marketing for 3 months and I'm not finding deals. The point of this, the great point for your viewers to take away is it's a lot easier to talk about being consistent, being persistent, spending the money consistently, putting in the productive hours and the productive inputs so that you can get the outputs later. It's a lot harder when you're in the trenches and when you're doing it every day and you're seeing the ACH come out of your bank account,
Yeah.
thousands of dollars every month. And these are in addition to your personal expenses, right? You still got to live your own life.
Yeah.
Your business is consuming a lot of time, money, energy, and it's on a daily basis that you have to live that. But when we talk about it on podcasts, we say, oh, 3 months, that's nothing. Try 3 years. Be consistent for 3 years. Well, a lot of people cannot survive it 3 years. And so
Yeah.
that's what makes the business difficult is that it can be not enough fruit for your labor at times. Right? There's periods where I go through 3 months without getting a new deal, and then the fourth month maybe I get 3 or 4 deals. Sometimes that
Yeah.
happens. It's tough. Those 3 months are tough. So you have to. That's where you have to steel your mind. That's where mindset's so important. You have to have faith that you're going to do your inputs, and eventually those inputs are going to be rewarded with results.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, it's tough, and we talk about this all the time. Like I'm doing the direct mail right now, and that's like 3 times more expensive than the SEO. And dude, I just did it. Hopefully, I'm hoping this is because of the holiday, but like we talked about, I just did it 3 weeks ago, bro. No one's calling. There's no like the first batch was good, and then after this batch has been horrible. So I'm hoping it's just because of the holidays and everything like that, and then January things will pick up. But it's pretty brutal. Um, but
For sure, the holidays has an impact on response rates, and
yeah,
to hang in there. The first quarter, I think, is going to be a big quarter for you because of all the inputs that you're doing, all the marketing that you're doing right now. Your SEO is ramping up, your direct mail is planting seeds. I think first quarter of 24 is going to be the quarter of Mikey Plactor.
dude, it's funny. The last 2 years that I been doing deals, right? It's like those deals came in tax season when I'm like working 60, 70 hours a week. Because I remember last year I got 2 deals in tax season. This 2 years ago I got a deal. And it was like God is just telling me like this is like, oh, you want this to work? The timing won't work, but it's like here's your deals, don't fuck it up.
Yeah, yeah, and it kind of makes me think about like how deals work out in general. Is that the deals never look good. Like there's always some warts on them.
Something.
Yeah. So like if I was going to teach someone how to do real estate investing, I think the thing that I would do is just case study after case study after case study because every deal is unique and there's new things that you can learn from every single deal and they're never going to look sexy. There's always going to be like today, this morning, I had problems with a closing I'm supposed to have. Hopefully it closed already. It was supposed to be at noon. Well, there was title issues that none of the attorneys picked up on it. Title company didn't pick up on it. And then like we're supposed to close at noon today, and I'm getting phone calls in the morning like, oh, there's an issue with the certificate of occupancy. I'm
Oh,
like, what the hell? But no deal works out like easy. it's always challenging. And to your point where you said, like, God sending you a message where it's, you can have the deals, but you can have them when the timing's not going to be right, and you're going to have to suffer through that little challenge, right? So there's always challenges, and as entrepreneurs, we have to be up for the challenge, and you push. You got your sword out, right, and you're going to battle, and you got to push through the challenges, as opposed to trying to find a way where there's no challenges, because that path doesn't exist. So
Right.
get better at solving challenges as opposed to looking for opportunities where there's no obstacle, because that's probably not a profitable way to go about things.
Nice. Awesome, man. I was gonna say, any suggestions for new real estate investors, but we kind of touched on all that shit, man, as far as like what they should be doing, any advice for newbies. Any advice, give us a call, give them a call if you have questions, reach out to me. I'm always open. But yeah, man, anything else you want to talk about? And if not, how can people reach out to you and get in touch with you?
The quick advice I will give is, design a business that works for you. Like right now, I have a very much a lifestyle business where I'm not working all the time, but it works well because I have two young kids and I have a wife, and to give attention to everybody, and that sort of thing. And that's just where I'm at in my life. Maybe in a couple of years, I'll be devoting more time to the business. I don't know. So I would say if you're a new investor, figure out what your how much time you can devote to the business, figure out what your skill sets are, and
Yeah.
that will help you determine like what lead gen and marketing you should be doing. Figure out how much money you have to devote to the business, and then create a plan based on that. Craft it to the design that you can succeed with, instead of just trying to do my plan or Michael's plan or somebody else's plan. I think that's how you can be successful. Is figuring out what works for you, and then doing that, and then trying to be consistent there, and be patient, and have faith, but also have grace on yourself. There's a lot of times where things go wrong, but you got to give yourself a little bit of grace sometimes. Like, hey, I didn't hit it as hard. Tomorrow I'll be back. That sort of thing. So we're humans, so you got to take everything with a grain of salt. And where can they reach me? I mean, on Instagram, at Namon Khokhar, NamonKhokhar. That's where I've been posting a lot of stuff lately, trying to like just. I only have a couple hundred followers on there, so it's not something I'm doing a great job at. Something I need to improve on. Um, but other than that, I mean, you could. That's probably the best place. Let's just leave it at that.
All right. All right, dude. That was great. This was good stuff, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Phenomenal. It felt like a phone conversation that I had with you like every other day.
Yeah, every day. We talk for like 2 hours a day. All right, man. Thanks a lot. We'll talk a little later.
It was a pleasure, Mike.
All right, man. Bye bye.